Hi everyone, my name is Tega Claire. I'm a public speaker, I'm a content creator, I'm a writer, and I'm into other creative works, here and there. So, I'm so excited about this video I'm making right now because I'm here to share my campus story, and today I'm particularly talking about how I got a scholarship without an exam. I mean, that was a oh my goodness! I can't wait to start sharing. So let's go. So it started in 2016 when I just got out of school, out of secondary school. At that time I had written my WAEC, my senior school certificate exams, and I didn't make my papers then, so I needed to write again. But this time it was quite different. You know, it was quite different because I was at the phase of my life where I was beginning to understand God's purpose for me. I was beginning to understand myself better. I began to look deeply into what I'm called to do, into my purpose, my likes, my dislikes, my tendencies. So basically, I would say that period of my life was my time of self discovery. So, at this same time, I also had I would call it a divine vision to study in Covenant University. Now, Covenant University for me, or my wanting to go there, wasn't just because of the glamour, the beauty, the excellence, and the name around the school. It wasn't just that for me. In fact, I see it as something that God laid in my heart because of what He wanted me to fulfill in life. So I think around that time in 2016, I started reading about it. I started checking out materials, any single, material that would give me an information about Covenant University. I went and searched for it. I asked questions and everything. And I started taking steps towards the application process. Firstly, I needed to write my exams again, my O level exams, and then I needed to write JAM, the exam that would take me into a university in Nigeria. So I had to sit for those exams. I had to start working hard to get money just to get those forms and also to get the Covenant University form. And my plan was that by September 2017, I had a date. I would be a student of Covenant University. But I guess where I missed it was the timing. It was from God, but I guess I was just, going ahead of myself and ahead of God to try to fulfill it in my own way. But at that time, my level of understanding was if there was anything that needed to be done, I felt it was on me. And then all God had to do was to provide. And that was the mindset I moved with. I took steps in faith. I mean, I did crazy things, and I hope time would allow me to share, all of those things. If I can't, I would share more of it in the next video. But basically, my focus here is to tell us how I finally got a scholarship, without writing an exam. So I did everything possible. In fact, my mom had to tell me one time, Tega, I can't take you to the school. And obviously, I knew. I knew my mom was just a single mom at that time trying to take care of six of us. And I knew I couldn't even try to put that burden on her. So I told her, Mommy, don't worry. I'm going to get into school, but it's going to be based on God's ability, not even my ability and not your ability. I told her to don't worry about me, just calm down. You just support me in any way you can with the forms, with the just transportation to travel down to Lagos, to Ogun State, close to Lagos State then and everything. But just leave the rest, leave the tuition for God, leave the all the expenses for God. Just allow me get the admission and let's see what God would do. So finally, to the glory of God, I got the admission, and it was quite tough. It was tough traveling there, getting to go through the post UTME exams, getting to go through the interview session. In fact, I kept on praying. I'm like, Holy Spirit, please, none of these men and women on the interview panel should ask me who my sponsor is, because I know that's one of the questions that they usually ask when you're about to go into a very expensive school. And I've heard that before. So I was like, God, nobody's going to ask me who's my sponsor. In fact, when I was filling the form, for the application form to the school, I had to tell my mom, I'm using your details, but don't worry about it. If you want me to sign, I would sign for you. Just help me do every single thing I can to get past the admission process, and we trust God for provision. Funny enough, at that time I never knew there was something like a DOF scholarship, a David Oyedepo Foundation scholarship. I didn't know about that at the time, so I didn't go through that route. My plan was that I would get the admission, and by my faith, and by God's mercies, I was going to get the provision for the school fees, which was over ₦1 million at that time. I mean, over. I can't get the exact amount, but it was so much. So I finally got the admission, and I packed every single thing I had that I would need over there. I packed every single thing there to resume school. And to tell you how dogged I was, I left my smartphone. If you want to go to Covenant, you cannot go with your SIM card, you cannot go with your smartphone. The only thing allowed is your laptop and a tablet. Yeah, a tablet. But I wasn't having a tab at the time, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave my smartphone here. I don't want to get into any trouble with the authorities and all of that. So I left, and I had to lodge because I didn't have my hostel details at that time, because I hadn't paid my tuition. If you pay your tuition, you get access to the hostel facility. But at that time, I hadn't, made the payment. So I had to lodge outside of Covenant University, which is still within Canaan land. I had to lodge, and I was there for days. I kept on praying. I was going out for outreaches in a land I didn't know anybody. Some operations were going on there where church members had to go out in the mornings and in the evenings for outreaches. And I kept on joining them. I would join the buses, go out in the morning, come back in the evening, go for prayers. I was just trusting God. And sometimes I would just sit outside the gate, the Covenant University gate, just opposite it. And I'm like, oh God, just do this. I'm already here in this vicinity. I just need to resume. Just provide. Just provide. And God was actually preparing me for something else. He was preparing me for another campus. And as time goes on in this series where I get to share my campus story, I would tell you how God helped me and how He used me whilst I was on campus. Because to the glory of God, I'm actually a graduate right now as I do this video. I'm a graduate of History and International Studies, and about to go for my youth service. And so far I can say I've been blessed by God, I've been privileged by God, but I was actually set up by God because I eventually went to a school I never wanted to go to, but it was actually God's plan, God's timing. So whilst I was there, still in the vicinity of Covenant University, I kept on praying, and it was laid in my heart one day after the morning prayers to go speak with Pastor David Jr., the son to Bishop David Oyedepo. And it was a huge step for me because I didn't know him from anywhere. He doesn't even know me. But I was just led in my heart to go talk to him and tell him, oh, I just came into this place. I just came from Warri, and I got an admission. I just, I'm at the point where I need to resume, but I'm not having the funds right now. I mean, it was quite crazy, but I just told myself, okay, if I'm being led to do this, why not? So I went and I told him, and I also told him I was expecting some money because actually I got a promise from a friend. I got to the point where I kept on searching for every possible means to get into school. And I was told that if you have 30% of the tuition to get into school, you can resume, and much later in the semester, you have to pay the rest of the 70%. So I said, that's fine. That's fine. And I think that 30% then was about 300,000 naira. about that amount, over just a bit over 300,000. And I told myself, okay, I had a friend who actually promised to give 100,000 naira. So at some point, I would call him, and he gave me the hopes. He told me, "Don't worry, you're gonna get the money. As soon as I get it, I'll transfer to you." So when I met Pastor David Riedbo, I told him, I mean, I have 100,000 naira, but I wasn't having it at that time. I was faithing it because a friend told me he would get me the money. So I was like, okay, sir, I have it. I wasn't lying. Before you start judging me, I wasn't lying. I was walking by faith. And he said, okay, it's fine. Go and speak to this man, this pastor, and tell him everything you just told me, and he would get back to me. And that was how I kept on communicating with him through this man. The day came. I mean, the day came when I was to go to school and bring my 100,000 nairas so he can complete the rest. Because that was what he said. He said, okay, since you have a part of the 30%, I would add up to it so you can resume and join your mates in school. So he told me, come on so and so day, through that pastor. That morning, I called my friend who promised me 100,000 naira. Behold, he wasn't having the money. I mean, it was the most devastating news I had heard, in a long time. It was heartbreaking for me because it wasn't just that he wasn't having the money. It was the fact that I had told Pastor D, Pastor David, that I had the money ready. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So I told him I had the money, and right now this friend is telling me he doesn't have the money anymore, or the person he was expecting to give to him wasn't having, all of those kind of stories. Actually, he was very truthful and honest. He wasn't having at that time. So it wasn't like he wanted to be, he didn't want to help. Of course, he wanted to help, but he wasn't having it. So I felt it was heartbreaking. So I cried. I felt so bad. I felt down. And I finally mustered enough courage to go and meet the pastor that he told me to meet. And I explained everything to him. And in the same vein, the pastor was so down, so devastated, because he actually has been speaking on my behalf without me knowing. I mean, that whole experience, oh gosh, it was life-changing for me. He didn't tell me, but he didn't tell me he has been speaking on my behalf to Pastor David. He didn't tell me that. It was on the very day I was to bring my own part of the 30% that he told me. And I've been pushing on your case. I've been telling him to pay attention to you. I've been trying to make him, to see reasons why he should just do his part so I can resume, and he felt so bad. But the thing was, he felt sad about it. But he wasn't angry with me. And I don't know why. I mean, he was supposed to be angry with me because it was like I lied. I wasn't lying. I was working by faith. But to someone who, anybody out there could just say, you were lying. You lied to him. So he told me, okay, I feel so bad. I feel disappointed. Actually, he was disappointed because he had gotten himself, too far into this issue, and he has been pushing on my behalf for me to resume. So I finally went to meet him, and he told me, okay, go back to your lodge and I would tell Pastor David what has happened. And so he went back. And what struck me the most was the news he came back with. I mean, friends, there's nothing God cannot do, especially when you have a sincere heart, especially when your heart is clear. He went to meet Pastor David, and Pastor David told him to come back to me to tell me that he isn't angry with me. And I was so shocked. The next thing he said was, Pastor David said, I'm quoting him right now, Pastor David said, if you go back to Warri and get another admission somewhere else, I would pay your fees. I mean, it was mind blowing, because at this point, this is somebody I don't know. This is somebody who is supposed to get angry with me for lying in quotes. This is somebody who doesn't even know me, doesn't know my parents, doesn't have any guarantee about me. And he was deciding to pay my fees if I get an admission somewhere else. I just knew it was God at work. But I'm going to be honest with you. My zealous mind back then was filled with pain because I wasn't going to attend Covenant University anymore. And I kept on crying. In my own words, I told the pastor then that I felt like a woman who had carried a baby for 9 months only to get a miscarriage on the 9th or the 8th month or so. I felt like I had carried this baby for so long, the dream to go to Covenant University, and then at the verge of resuming there, I got, I couldn't go because of the funds. I felt like I had miscarried a pregnancy. I felt so down. It was heartbreaking, actually. I cried for days, until I got an encounter with this same pastor who had to speak to me and make me understand the process I was in. And I can't forget, also on the, fast forward now, on the 1st of October, I was still there. We had a program in church, and God gave me an encounter through the words that he said through Bishop David Oyedepo in one of the morning prayers. On the 1st of October, Bishop David Oyedepo came up and said, this makes it, I think, 10 years that this commission had to pay a rent of 300,000 naira. 10 years ago. I think 10 or 20 years. I'm not so sure of the years, but it was over a decade. I'm so sure it was over a decade. And he said, at that time, this commission couldn't pay 300,000 naira rent. I looked up and down. I looked around me. I didn't have the money. And I told God, you know that if I had this money, I wouldn't think twice before paying the church's rent. But it wasn't available. But he said, he was almost in tears, and I knew that word was for me. He said, but today, 300,000 naira is not a problem to this commission. 3 million is not a problem. 300 million is not a problem. Even 3 billion naira is not a problem to this commission right now. He said, but God was taking us through a process. He said, in his words, that if we had jumped into the phase that we are in right now, as a commission, I'm quoting Bishop David Oyedepo right now. He said, if we had jumped into this realm that we are in currently as of that year, we wouldn't have been able to sustain that capacity. We didn't have capacity to manage that kind of funds that we now manage. So God was taking us through a process. And so he opened a scripture, where God had to tell the Israelites, I have given you the land of Canaan, but I'm not going to allow you to occupy the land at once, because if you go in at once, the evil beasts, the people around, the strangers will overwhelm you. As soon as I heard that scripture, I knew it was for me. I knew, because I kept praying to God. I'm like, God, why would I get to this point and have to go back? I've gotten the admission. I've gone through every single process to get it. Why would money stop me? I knew it wasn't money that was stopping me because God had been providing. God had been providing. When I needed the money for the form, the money for transportation, when I needed people who would help me do certain things, concerning all the processes, I got all of those things. The only thing that wasn't coming was the money to pay my school fees, just 30% of the school fees. And I knew somehow God was telling me something. And as soon as Bishop David Oyedepo mentioned that scripture, I'm going to add it in the comment section so we can all go through it. I knew he was letting me know that money is not stopping you. I'm taking you through a process. And that's why I can sit here today to share my campus experience, which I will be sharing, because God actually took me through a process in my campus journey. I usually describe it as, by saying that God set me up. Yeah. Positively, God set me up, by putting me in places that I wouldn't want to be, well, it was for my good. It was for my good. I wanted Covenant University at that time, but God was telling me, I want it for you also, but it's not yet time. I need you in a place in Warri. Oh my goodness, I'm laughing right now. I need you to go back to Warri. There's something I want to do with you in Warri. And truly, 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 God used me in Warri. God helped me in Warri. God God took me to heights I never imagined I would get to as a young girl on campus. My experience on campus was a whole lot, which I'll be sharing with you, in the series as we go on. So back to Covenant University. So I had to go back to Warri and, you know, get another admission. But whilst I was still there, it wasn't just the encounter with Pastor David and him telling me, giving me a scholarship. God also blessed me with fatherly advices and blessings and counsels that if I hadn't received before going back to, Warri, I would have messed up in school. I would have messed up. God had to give me an encounter with Pastor Miracle. Shout out to him in this video. Shout out to you, Sam. Very grateful for all that you did. Shout out to Pastor David. I'm immensely grateful for what you did. So God had to give me an encounter with Pastor Miracle. He took me into his house and told me, you have to pack your things and leave that lodge. Come to my house and stay with my family. And when it's time for you to go back to Warri, you go back to Warri and resume. I was blessed. Even though I was still trying to get out of the disappointment of not resuming in Covenant University, I knew beyond a shadow of doubt that God had shown me mercy. These were people who were supposed to be angry with me and tell me, how can you lie? Anybody could say I lied, but God just decided to show me mercy. First of all, with Pastor David Oyedepo Jr., and then with Pastor Miracle, who took me into his family house, and I had to stay with him. And on a particular day, he called me, and he was a counselor. By profession. And he counseled me, advised me. He taught me things I hadn't even heard from my own biological father. Things that were life-saving to me. The principles I used when I finally got into school, and which helped me. It distinguished me. It made me stand out. And at the end of the day, after those sessions with him, he told me, when I started expressing my gratitude to him, and he told me, probably God brought you from Warri just to hear these words, because it was so life-changing for me. I'm really blessed to have had that encounter with him. I'm really blessed to have had the encounter with Pastor David Oyedepo Jr., who actually, saw me through school. I haven't shared this experience with the whole world, and that's why I'm actually doing this. So if you're out there, you have a big project, you want to go to school, God can provide. I'm a testimony of God's provision. I went through my 4 years on campus without having to pay a dime for my school fees. Even my house rent and other things I paid, they were by God's favor. They were by working on biblical principles. So if you're out there, I'm here telling you and sharing my experiences that God can provide. And this is how I got a scholarship to school, a 4-year scholarship without having to write an exam and without having to know anybody. These were people I just met for the first time. So I hope you learned a thing or two. Feel free to share your experiences. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to drop your own experiences in the comment section, and join me in the other series, in the other videos. And cheers! Thanks for watching. Yeah, bye.